G'day mates, my name's Mark. I'm filling in for your teacher, Mr. McGee. He asked me to go over some vocabulary with you about Australia, which is where I'm from. I mean, I just got off the cricket ground, been hitting a lot of sixes, and I thought, why not? I mean, after all, your teacher, he's a handsome bloke. Let me tell you, an intelligent fella. Alright, so, without further ado, because he told me that's what he normally says, so we're going to get started. Let's take a look at some of the vocabulary. So we have the Aborigines. Now the Aborigines, those are the first people in Australia. Now if you think about it like North America. Now North America, you have the Native Americans. Now the Native Americans are the first people who lived in what you would call the States. Well, in Australia, the Aborigines, those are the first people. So, Aborigines. Now, if you look over at the second one, the Outback. Now, the Outback is, it's desert. It's a desert area. It's kind of in the central part of Australia. Most people in Australia live along the coast. They live along the coast because it's a lot easier and you have more water than if you try to live out in the desert. Desert area, not the greatest place to try to build large cities. So we tend to stay along the coast and away from the outback. So outback, that's the desert area. Desert area, not nearly as much fun as living on the coast. Now you see this third word here? Oceania. Oceania, if you look at the vast Pacific, the Pacific Ocean has thousands of islands. And those islands, when you look at them, you think, there's no blokes living there. It's impossible. Actually, there's a lot of countries that are in the Pacific Ocean. And so Oceania refers to all those island countries out there. So Oceania, that is all the island countries out in the Pacific. Now, this fella is one you really want to take a look at. James Cook. Without James Cook, there's no Australia. If there's no Australia, there's no Mark. And listen, Mark, you want Mark out on the cricket grounds, hitting all the sixes, helping Australia win the titles. So, James Cook. James Cook, he is the English sea captain who actually discovered Australia as well as New Zealand. Even though we don't talk about New Zealand too much because, you know what, we want Australian rugby, not New Zealand rugby. So James Cook, British captain, discovers Australia in 1770. So 1770, discovers Australia, now you got a country called Australia. Now if you look over here, Mr. McGee, your teacher, he told me, you guys have gone through rural and you've gone through urban. Now rural and urban, rural is going to refer to the countryside. Now, the countryside, in our case, is the outback. It's going to be out in the desert area. Urban is where most Australians live. We live in urban areas because you're going to notice when Mr. McGee, when he makes a video talking about the maps of Australia. By the way, I slowed down. It's not because I'm having a hard time trying to keep any sort of an accent up or anything like that, or an accent. It's just, there's so much knowledge, it's overwhelming me. So, the urban areas, that's where most Australians live, because the central part of Australia is outback. It's desert. So we live along the coast, either in the urban areas, in the suburban areas. Now, monolith. What's a monolith? A monolith is one solid giant rock. Now, you're going to learn later on about Ayers Rock, or what we sometimes in the Aborigine language we call Uluru. But a monolith is one giant rock, it's one solid object. We call that a monolith. And the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef, it is one of the jewels of Australia. The Great Barrier Reef, largest reef in the world. And it's full of all sorts of colorful fish. More fish, more marine wildlife than you can possibly imagine. So the Great Barrier Reef. So, hope this helps. I told Mr. McGee, again, Dad mentioned that is an intelligent fella. Intelligent fella. And unbelievably handsome, might add too. He told me, make sure to let you know if you have any questions, because you can't understand my awesome accent. If you have any questions, talk to him on conference. Alright, this is Mark, signing out from Australia. You back down, if you ever get down under, we'll hit some cricket balls, hit those sixes, help Australia win the title. And my accent is amazing. Perfect. Nobody would know the difference. Take care, guys.